Hi there, this is Matt with the Why We Horror podcast, this time covering Scream 3. There are a couple of trigger warnings this time that I wanted to get into. We are going to be discussing some real life crimes, including the assassination of children, as well as SA. If that's something that triggers you, this is the time to hop off. My name is Matt. As I said, this is the Why We Horror podcast, where we dive deep into why we tell horror stories in the first place. And my favorite concluding chapter of a trilogy is kind of basic. It's The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, fabulous film, and one of my all-time favorite movies. Who wants to go next?
Yeah, I'm Jared. And then I would say that my favorite concluding movie in a trilogy is probably Return of the Jedi. I think it's, or I get, oh, yeah, I think Return of the Jedi is probably better than Revenge of the Sith. But I think both tales and the tragedy of Anakin Skywalker are really good tales. With obviously Return of the Jedi being more of a heroic and uplifting ending than the tragic ending.
I land Revenge of the Sith, fun fact, but continue.
All right, I'm Amber. This will probably not surprise Matt at all, but it's a newer one. I will say my favorite trilogy is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Yeah.
I actually have only, I think, watched it once after theaters too, because it's also just extremely difficult for me to watch personally. Like, I start that movie crying, like, I think it just does such a great job of finalizing that story, the Guardian story. I think you can watch it even without a lot of the extra Avengers and the rest of the MCU. I think it still holds up if you don't have it. But I also think it changes the way I watch the first and the second one. I can't watch them the same anymore because once you get through it, you're like, oh, this is a different story than I thought it was actually. And it turned the whole series on its head for me, and I loved it.
Hello, I'm Paris. My favorite trilogy ending, I think, is Austin Powers Goldmember. I think it wraps that up very well. Stay silly, stays true. I like it.
I absolutely did not expect that answer. That blows my mind. Fabulous.
Yeah, I love that.
All right. Like I said before, we are covering Scream 3. This is a film directed by Wes Craven, written by Ehren Kruger, but co-written by Lateta Kalogridis, Wes Craven, Carrie Fisher, and Kevin Williamson, all in an uncredited capacity, starring David Arquette, Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, Patrick Dempsey, Parker Posey, Scott Foley, Lance Henriksen, Emily Mortimer, Jenny McCarthy, Lynn McRae, Liev Schreiber with Jamie Kennedy and Roger L. Jackson. Cinematography by Peter Deming. Score by Marco Beltrami, who I think does the best job with this entry. And edited by Patrick Lussier. A brief synopsis of this film is, Ghostface goes Hollywood, y'all. What did we think about Scream 3?
I liked it. I think, like the other ones, it's one of those ones too where, like, it's true to what it is. It's silly. It's easy to watch. I know, like, behind the scenes, there's a lot of depth to it, but, like, watching it doesn't really come off that way. If you just watch it and don't really think about it. So overall, I liked it. I also like that this one was, I guess, spoiler alert, I don't know. At the end, I like that there was only one instead of a whole crew this time. I liked that.
Jared, why don't you go next?
Yeah, I still like this one. I don't think I had the same initial reaction as the other two, where I was like, wow, this was like phenomenal. But it was still not a bad movie by any means. It was still really good. It kept me on my toes, as Paris was saying. Like, there were a few instances where I was like, oh well, there's still got to be two, because it seems like it's set up for there to be two, because I was kind of waiting for that twist of like they're gonna try and bait me and make me see that like the who I think is the initial killer is not it, and then the actual switch was that there's only one of them, and I also got all of them wrong as well. So I was the whole time when I was guessing, I was like they would get killed off immediately. So I was like, I'm positive it's that person. So, but other than that, like, I think just as like for a movie itself, I think it's just kind of one of the like, it's still made really well, and I think some of the, I think it's paced really well, but I think some of the like story beats were just like I was like, okay, interesting. Like it's clearly like they've done two others of these, and they're just like, let's just get it moving along and stuff like that. Which wasn't bad. It was still good. It was creative, and so I still liked it. Even if I didn't like it as much as those first two, it was still good. And I thought the themes in it were like, I think what I'm really liking about these movies is that they're all building off of each other. It's not like you're watching one and then you watch the next one and they're barely connected. The character development, specifically between the main three characters, and them all kind of growing in some capacity, is actually like it's refreshing that it's like well thought out, that it's not just like we'll just make something up and make some kind of character development for them. It's like you can very clearly see how Neve Campbell's character, in the first one, she's just a teenager who's just trying to be a teenager. In the second one, she's going to college to be an actor, and in the third one, she works as for a helpline for women in crisis. And like, even though there is nothing mentioned in the previous movie about her wanting to do the things she does in the next movie, it's always believable, and it's growth that I'm like, I can see how this woman kind of like is always trying to push through life and trying to she, like most of the time with The Last Girl, you don't need to have her actually grow a whole lot from movie to movie or whatnot.
Right on. Amber, what did you think of Scream 3?
I like this one. I think Scream as a franchise, maybe more so with the original three than the rest, but it's just like very campy, just as like that's what it is. We're here to sort of make fun of the genre, but at the same time paying homage to the genre. It's sort of like a love story, but also like a critique of slasher films, of horror, of treatment of women specifically. I think in horror, and with this one, I think it dials up the camp and like the meta to like 13, 15, 18. I love the rules of horror films. I love the rules of sequels, and I love the rules of a trilogy. Jamie Foxx's character is one of like my favorites. Or Jamie Kennedy, yeah. Sorry, Jamie Kennedy's different guy. He's one of my favorites, and I love kind of the nerdy guy through every sort of horror film, but he really is just like, this is what it is, guys. I love that they bring him back as like a videotape. And I love that they set it like, this film almost like telegraphs exactly what it's going to do, right? First of all, cast is stacked because you have like the main cast and then the cast that's playing them in a movie. So you kind of get double. And the way that movie script is written, it's like a mirror or a caricature of who they are as characters. And I think that adds to the point of like the growth that we see in this film that was alluded to. They kind of see themselves as like the caricatures of themselves, the worst parts of themselves, or, the most campy, the most meta versions. And they kind of combat that and turn into the better versions or the best versions of themselves. But it also just tells you, like, this is how it's going to go. And then at the end, somehow you're still surprised that it does that, because he just says trilogy's rules are out the door. Anyone can die. The killer can be anybody. We can rewrite the script. We can tell you a different story than we told in the first two, and you just have to accept it because this is the final and this is how it's going to be. So I don't know. It's such a cool use, I think, of the horror genre to both like celebrate and critique the horror genre. This one is one of my favorites, I think, of the whole series. And if they had stopped here, I think it would have been great. Without spoilers for the rest of this franchise, 4 is terrible. I think they're okay. I think maybe they're coming back to themselves, but these 3 are definitely like the pinnacle of Scream for me. I think they do a great job, as this is the original trilogy. They could have ended it and it would have been perfect, honestly.
Fun fact, before I get into my thoughts on it, at the movie theater I work in, when I'm doing name tags, the most name tags for a Scream movie I've given is for Scream 4. That's the most requested Scream one.
No, Matt. Don't let them do that.
I like this movie. I do think it's a pretty significant drop in quality between 2 and 3, but I also like it and always like it, and I think it's because it sticks the themes and it sticks the landing with the themes, as well as the character growth, particularly of Sidney. Well, the commentary is really biting, and the humor is pretty edgy in the first 2. This one goes for a little more madcap and silly approach, which is no less effective. It just kind of becomes a metatextual take on the exact thing that Scream was trying to deconstruct in the first one. In essence, Scream 3 becomes a stab movie. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because as far as like franchise horror films go, Scream 3 is still better than any single Friday the 13th movie. It's better than nearly all the Halloween movies and Nightmare on Elm Streets. Like, if this is what's considered a whiff for the franchise, it is a spectacular, like, at least double. And I like it. But this movie had quite a bit going on behind the scenes, which was alluded to. So, if you'll allow me to give you a straight up lecture, I'm going to give you the original plans, which is going to then devolve into several different things before we even get into our analytical themes. So, buckle up. The original plans for this was that when Kevin Williamson sold the script for the first Scream, he sold it as a trilogy with treatments across 5 pages for what became Scream 2 and Scream 3. The success of Scream 1 and 2 brought forth a brought forth a locked street date for Scream 3 to hit. Now, here's where it gets weird. Williamson's original treatment opened with Sidney and a friend getting a phone call from Ghostface inside the house. The friend would get stabbed, but Sidney would pull a gun and unload it into the killer's chest. Sidney would pull the mask to reveal that it was a crazy Ghostface fan. This event would send Sidney into hiding. The film would jump about 2 years and pick up in Woodsboro, close to 10 years after the events of the original film. The town shows signs of the trauma of the events that had lingered from the first film and how Hollywood exploited that tragedy. True to form, Stab 3 is being made, and Gale is the screenwriter of the film. There is a director character modeled after Craven himself, who would have been a sinister-looking red herring, but at his core, a kind and gentle figure by the film's end. The cast of the movie would have played a small part, with Tori Spelling being considered to reprise her role as herself, playing Sidney as she did in Scream 2. But the focus would have been on the kids of Woodsboro High who grew up in the shadow of the tragedy and who all react differently to everything that had happened before. Several students would have a film club, and it is when the club members start dying that attention shifts back to Sidney. The kids are getting killed by Ghostface, who's trying to lure Sidney back in an effort to stop this once and for all. Sidney returns to Woodsboro. She is confronted by the sets of her old home in a big set piece, but the film would have concluded at a character's house, or a character named Julie's house, where Sidney, being lured by Ghostface, enters the home to find the bodies of all the slain film club members. She stands horrified, and then all the victims would rise up. They faked their deaths to lure Sidney out and be the ones who the plan to be the ones to successfully kill Sidney in an effort to gain fame for being the ones to kill the real life final girl. They were connected via what Mickey mentioned, the Psycho website and the classifieds in Scream 2. There was a Ghostface network online, and you were going to find out that the mastermind behind all of this, orchestrating the whole bloody affair, was Stu Macher from prison. Sidney and Gale would expose the stab fanatics, and the film was to end with Gale leaving Hollywood behind to get back to grounded journalism in a final shot that would mimic the close of the original first film. What do people think about that version of Scream 3 before I move on?
I think I guess I could have gotten on board with it. I think that at the very least, I could have seen the connection with Sidney going back to Woodsboro and whatnot. I felt like her going to the movie set and stuff like that. I was like, she's there and whatnot, but she, like it. I think I already forgot about the reasoning of her coming out of hiding, but it's. I was like, it was fine and whatnot, and like I think that the twist of it being like a bunch of ghost killers and that kind of critique on like they're trying like the next generation trying to defeat the tropes of the franchise and whatnot. That's all interesting stuff, and I think I could have seen how that would have worked. I don't know if it would have been like, that would have made me enjoy this movie way more. But I can see what the ideas and what they're going for are. Yeah, I don't know.
Paris, Amber, what did you think of that version of Scream 3?
That's kind of fucked up. Like a ton of kids faking their own death, getting her back. I mean, I can kind of see it, but at the same time, like, I don't know. I don't see it playing out well. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like it would either really hit or really miss. And, like, it would have to go really, really well for it to hit. Else it would be kind of rough.
I don't know. Okay, about it more because this is the third one and realize it. I don't know. I don't know if it would hit with like the victims being kids still being high schoolers. I do see that like maybe they try to redeem themselves by being like, oh, the kids aren't actually dead, but I think that might leave kind of a sour taste. And then also, just part of Scream itself, I always found the fact that Sidney was like on the hit list really wild because, I mean, obviously it's already bad enough that like it's her mother, and because she's having an affair and ruined some boy's life, she's already on, she was already murdered for that. And so it always just comes back to like women and sexuality and men controlling them and all of that. So I always thought it was weird that Sidney already is like on the hit list for her mother's crimes. And that's just like a theme that keeps rolling through the second and through the third one. So having like high school kids be like, we're gonna kill her because she's a final girl, and just paying like absolutely no attention to how she got put in that situation is awful as well. So I don't know. I feel this story, the one that actually got made, feeds a little more into Scream and its campiness and its meta-ness, and is a little more palatable, maybe because
Okay.
it's like Hollywood getting its just desserts. And I think people were kind of turning on celebrities and the celebrity lifestyle and the rich and the famous at that time. So I think that probably played a little better than high school kids all dying and then teaming up to kill Sidney.
I think this version sounds really intriguing. Um, and I want to see this version of the movie. That said, I like the trajectory that Scream 3 takes. It's different than the other two, but I think that difference is necessary, and we'll kind of get into why shortly. Um, they were locked to start shooting this film in about June of 1999. Kevin Williamson could only commit to a 30-page treatment of the film because he had become so popular. He had other writing commitments. The script was going to be helmed by Ehren Kruger, who got to work on a draft, but 7 weeks before cameras were set to roll, a real life tragedy struck. On April 20th, 1999, two kids armed with guns, knives, and bombs went into their school and carried out the nation's biggest school shooting to that point, killing 13 before turning the guns on themselves. A couple of important pieces about Columbine High School's shootings. Um, because the killers were deeply invested in media, particularly video games, music, and movies, and active in making short films that featured heavy use of violence and guns, the media was quick to place the blame on the movies. Offering a touch of credence to this is that the mastermind behind uh, the attack, the person who was most responsible for carrying out this act of terrorism, um, did so by structuring it as a three-act play. They were only successful in achieving part of their plan, but this is what their plan actually was. They were to place a propane bomb in a field and arm it to blow in an effort to drag police in the opposite direction away from the school. In tandem, they were placing another bomb in the lunchroom of the school set to blow at the same time as about 5 minutes after the one in the field blew. It was placed at the bottom level of their school. The plan was that the explosion would have concussed out, knocking the walls out from the lunchroom, caving the entire second floor into the first floor, um, injuring and killing most people. Then the killers estimated that there would be about 450 kids in the lunchroom alone. That was their estimate. There were actually 455 people, so they were pretty close to their estimates. The killers would enter the remains of the school and use their weapons to pick off any survivors. They assumed that if the police arrived, they would die by shootout. Um, However, one of them journaled about leaving the school if successful enough and fancied going to an airport and maybe stealing a plane to slam into a building. They planted two more bombs timed in their trunks of their car, set to explode about an hour after the shooting was to take place in an effort to kill all the news crews and first responders who were present at the school. Only one of those bombs successfully blew up, and that was the one that was out in the field that did successfully drag the police away from the school so they could carry out their shooting and delay the active response. But with all of this in mind, and the fact that you had two kids who emphasized violence from the media as basic fantasies that were very similar to the events that they chose to play out, coupled with a film about a group of kids who were emulating a movie as a way to touch fame and make a real life movie, Craven wanted nothing to do with this version of Scream 3 anymore. So Wes Craven, Marion Madalena, and Carrie Woods, who were both his creative partners, as well as the Weinsteins, held a meeting to figure out what to do with Scream 3. Craven didn't want to make a movie where kids were killing kids, and he wanted to try and postpone the film a full year to fully rework Scream 3 and maybe schedule it to correspond with Kevin Williamson's off season from Dawson's Creek so that he could return and fully execute writing duties. But the Weinsteins shut this down, insisting on making their December 10th, 1999 release date. So they had exercised their control over Craven by who was locked into the project contractually to deliver a movie on that date. So they suggested doing Scream 3 without any blood. To which Craven said, "Be real, if we make this movie without blood, call it something else. If you call it Scream, there's a certain set of standards and expectations you have to deliver violence, and it has to come from a place of reality." The compromise to that was a film that would only have 10 gallons of blood instead of the 50 that was used for the first Scream film. But they had to still start shooting the film in June. So they had to do that because Neve Campbell and Courteney Cox were stars of television shows at the time. They only had that June to August window, and worse than that, Neve Campbell could only offer 20 days because she was filming 3 other things at the same time. So, with all of that in mind, the fact that you had 2 killers in real life who basically orchestrated this massive terroristic event, I fully understand how that version of Scream 3 hits a little too close to home. Ehren Kruger came in to redraft, and when he did so, he threw away the Williamson script under Craven's influence that chose to satirize Hollywood in particular. In Ehren Kruger's first draft, it offered a hybrid of the 2 Scream 3s. It opened with the Cotton Weary death and featured Stab being filmed in Woodsboro from the Williamson one. And it featured Sidney getting kidnapped in the first act, who would be completely absent until the end of the movie, as Dewey and Gale tried to find where Sidney was and rescue her from Ghostface. A lot of the set pieces and deaths are pretty much the same in that script, but the Ghostface reveal was completely different, with it proving to be Neil Prescott, Sidney's father, who was upset that these Stab films kept going on, and his goal was to kill Gale, who set this whole story in motion. What do you guys think of that?
That's also a pretty rough one, and I think that's mostly just because it's kind of clunky. Dope, yeah. Yeah, just hearing those like story beats. No, you said that the Cotton death was still the start of the movie in that one. And I thought that was a good start for this movie specifically, and with the rest of it being so Hollywood focused. And with all of the stuff that like I'm not 100% sure it was meant to be a critique on the Weinsteins, felt like it was from the we're watching this from the future point of view. So
getting there. I will.
Yeah.
We're going to circle back to that in about 1 second.
Okay, yeah, that's what I figured, so I didn't want to go too into that. But with the Cotton death kind of leading off the movie, I think that was a strong starting point. But I also feel like the starting death connects a lot of the movie. Like it sets the tone really well, and I don't think that death would have set the tone for a movie where it was Sidney's dad in the end.
Well, I guess
but I don't know.
For being the one to have the affair that kind of allowed Billy to
Yeah.
like
I
frame him.
yeah. I see that. Yeah, I guess it's the way that they framed, like the way that they portrayed Cotton, the way that they had Liev Schreiber be like the super Hollywood like um, talk show host, with in the all white suit and everything like that. So like kind of him being uber Hollywood, kind of I guess set the theme for it to be like a big um, uh, Hollywood slasher movie. But I guess you're right. Like Cotton still would connect that dot of it being Sidney's dad. It was still a good intro to the movies. And I honestly think that's one thing I thought I didn't realize that these movies were going to be like the intro is very important to all three of them, with the second one being like insanely good. And then this one was also like really good, sets the tone and whatnot. As for the rest of the movie, I'm like, I don't know. I guess it could have still been a good movie. I think I'm just like I'm content enough with the one that I did see that it's hard to see it as something different. Like we were saying with the other version, I'm like I could see how it could work, but like at the same time, I liked the one that I did watch, so I don't really want to see it change a whole ton because it could go a lot. It could be a lot worse.
Well,
why would I want something to change when I liked it?
the draft was deemed acceptable, but the ending was tossed away. Kruger did another redraft, but was pulled from the project by the Weinsteins. What they would do would be that they found a writer that they liked, and they would work them absolutely to the grave. This happened to Kevin Williamson after Scream. That's why if you look at his credits, he has like 10 things, and like 6 of them are from Miramax or Dimension Films, right in the 3-year period between Scream and Scream 3. Like it's pretty intense. So they pulled Ehren Kruger from the project um, after 6 weeks to start working on something new. Craven brought in a writer that he was fond of and um, named Leita Kalogridis, who would go on to write Shutter Island and produce the Avatar movies. She is responsible for shaping the character of Roman and providing the ending. And she and Craven worked really hard together to pull the backstory about Sidney's mother and to shine a light on the ugly truth about Hollywood. Craven had a lot of run ins with the Weinsteins along the way and was fired from the first Scream movie, like the day he was about to get hired. And then Craven was like, hey, you can either have my name at the head of this movie or you don't. And they decided that having a Wes Craven movie, would make the first one more sellable. So Craven stayed on. He filmed the Drew Barrymore death scene, and Bob Weinstein hated everything that was shot and told him that he was going to be fired again. And so Wes brought in Patrick Lussier, edited the opening scene. Bob watched it and he was like, "What do I know?" And Craven didn't have any more interference on that first movie. The second movie they filmed in Georgia, and the first one was so successful they just let everything happen. But with this one, the Weinsteins were exercising a lot more control. So, with his plan to sort of shine a bit of an ugly truth about Hollywood, Craven redirected the conversation from blaming the movies, as was happening with the media presently due to the Columbine massacre. And he had the film expose a Hollywood producer who, rumors had it, was taking sexual advantage of women in the industry while exploiting a real life tragedy for financial gain, making this the first Me Too movie about 16 years beforehand. Um, and some of that was definitely intentional, which you can read about in the It All Began with a Scream book, which I highly recommend. It's a very good book. All right. we're going to move on to the analytical themes now that we have the history out of the way. Um, let's see. I want to, as we did with the other films, highlight a performance that I think is absolutely exceptional in this film that nobody else is going to talk about. And that is the performance by Josh Pais. He plays McDreamy's cop partner, and he has some of the best out of pocket lines. Like, that dude is funny as hell. My favorite one being, 10 more of these, 10 more murders, and we can publish a calendar. That line goes hard. I also like when talking about Cotton Weary, he was making a movie called Stab. He was stabbed. That cracks me up 100% of the time. There's also a really good deleted line that he has where when McDreamy's going to be with um, Gale Weathers, he's like, well, I'm going to go dust fingerprints with Jane Pauley. Um, Cracks me up. I love it. He was the original Raphael in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. Fun fact. I wanted to give an honorable mention to the character of Tyson Fox as well, played by Dion Richmond. He also had some really great comedic timing.
Yeah, I thought the side characters were pretty interesting in this one because they were very different from the other ones in the sense that, like, in the other ones, they're all just like people that are close to Sidney, whereas these people are all completely disconnected, and they also live in a very different world than Sidney. Like, they are all uber Hollywood, or if they aren't, they like have some, they're not just like a bunch of teenagers anymore, but they get chopped down all the same, right? So it's I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. Or actually, I'm going to take that back a little bit. They don't get chopped up all the same. One dude blows up in a house, so it's a little bit more grand, So
yeah,
I thought that was an interesting thing with all the characters. I did like that one detective character because to me it seemed like they just wanted to get Randy's humor still in the movie with a different character. Which, I mean, they still put Randy in the movie, right? But he had the same kind of quips as him, and I was just like, oh, that's kind of nice. It's very familiar.
I don't want to step on toes, but if I am the one speaking, I don't know.
you
I
are
would
speaking.
say Parker Posey. She steals almost every scene she's in every show, in every movie. But she's perfect for this. I think she's a little neurotic. I think it's great when she kind of out-Gales Gale sometimes, or she's like, well, my Gale would do this, and then actually it works better than what Gale is doing. I think that's great. It's sort of like Gale can kind of see like her traits and what use they are, and also like some of the bad traits, kind of where she gets in her own way or where she puts other people down, or how she can kind of be cruel and unfeeling. I think Parker Posey offers the opposite of that, and she's wonderful. I love her.
Yeah, I agree.
I actually think,
You're saying.
now that I actually am going to piggyback off of that. That was actually, Parker Posey was fantastic. And I think it's fun because, like, I just got done watching a bunch of movies with her in it, and where she's almost never playing a character that's like this. She's always really ditzy and kind of like awkward. And in this, she's like kind of method acting, Gale trying to be Gale, and it's I thought she was really good. She was. I'm really glad they put her in a lot of the movie, and she wasn't just some like side character. She was in most scenes. Like, I thought she was just going to be around a little bit, but she was around a lot, and I think it her kind of being like a third wheel to the Dewey and Gale stuff, but then also Gale being a third wheel to their stuff. Like, I thought that was a really fun thing. And then I was also just going to give a shout out to the Kevin Smith verse of it all, with Jay and Silent Bob being in the movie. Because I just I think the Kevin Smith verse is pretty fun. I was not expecting that. Like, I know that Miramax does all their stuff too, but I don't know what it was, but those two just popping up, playing as themselves, and I was like, well, this movie's obviously like in the same universe as Clerks now, which I think fits really well. Kind of love it.
I wanted to touch on the film's true villain. So Roman may be the killer of the film, but John Milton is the villain of this story. His actions or complacency within the film led to everything. Like 50 people are now dead because of the actions of this character. Now, he didn't do those actions, but what he did that night kind of spurred everything. And I think it's interesting that his character's death is the only one in the series that is treated really callously and without any kind of sympathy. Um, More than that, I think that the systemic event of men taking advantage of women is truly the like core theme of this film, and you see repeatedly with a lot of the different characters. You get it with Cotton Weary in the beginning, who completely is willing to pretend like he doesn't have a girlfriend to engage in like phone chatter with this random woman. Tom Prince, who is upset that the Emily Mortimer character didn't take his like sexual advances. Somehow George Lucas is a villain, which cracked me up. Um, what do people have to say about, I guess, the John Milton and the Me Too parallelism?
I think it's really easy to look back on it and say, oh, this was so obvious, right? And I'm actually surprised to hear you talk about how involved the Weinsteins were in the script and the rewrites, considering that, like, knowing what we know now, it's so obviously a dig at them very specifically. But I think at the time I think what we hear now is, oh, it was a known secret. It was a secret that wasn't a secret, but it was a secret. And I think they play it really well in this, because he's not the villain, but he kind of creates the villain of this story. He creates the killer, right? But he is the villain, like you said, in other ways. And so we this is funny. We kind of do get two villains in a way that we're used to with Scream. It's always two people, and the twist here was that it was one. But if you think about it, it's multiple men, mainly this Milton character, but there are more than one responsible party for death in this film, which I think is cool.
Yeah, it was Bob Weinstein that was more involved with the creative hand in this. He was in charge of Dimension, whereas Harvey was in charge of Miramax. And so they would put each other's names on both sides of it. So both of them, you'll see both names of Weinstein. However, the creative side of this was much more on Bob. I bet you that Harvey probably didn't even read the script. They were competitive against each other. So Bob probably thought it was kind of funny that this film was digging at Harvey, and Harvey was probably none the wiser until the like premiere or whatever, which is also kind of a like gold move.
I could even see it being that they might not have even seen themselves in that character, because they're like, well, I'm not a bad guy, right? Like, everything that they did, they probably thought that they were like, well, that's just Hollywood, because they keep on, like, that's what the Milton character keeps saying. Because a lot of, as you guys have been saying, is a lot of the themes is that they put a lot of the blame on Sidney's mother, And I think that one thing I thought about while I was watching it was I was like, I am interested in what problems Sidney has with her mother, but I don't like that everybody else seems to have an issue with her mother because it's not really a them thing. Sidney being a little upset at her makes sense because like she's like that's her mom, and it's hard to see your parents in positions that like you can't understand. Whereas like it's just kind of like these terrible people took advantage of her mom and hurt her really bad. And even so, even if her mom was just a promiscuous person, like that's no reason for her to be murdered and whatnot, and raped and all that other stuff. Like it's just like all these horrible things happen to her, but somehow she's getting blamed and almost villainized. Um, but like the only person who I think has a rational reason to be a little upset at her is her daughter, and it's literally just for the fact of she didn't really know who her mom was, and that's the only reason that she needs to be mad at her, or at least that was my initial thought while I was watching it. Whereas everybody else was like, well, she did all these things, and so she deserved it, and I'm like, that's not at all, and so Milton was like, that's just Hollywood, and it's like it's not. You're a bad person, and you did a horrible thing, and you created this character of what's the director's name again? The killer's name?
Roman Bridger.
Roman. That caught me off guard. I was not ready for all of that, but and so and I guess his character can also have that same kind of like critique of these awful people and whatnot, but he has it from a very different point of view, and a much more psychotic point of view. But I don't know. I guess maybe I need to think about it a little bit more and hear other people's thoughts on it. But that was my thoughts throughout watching a lot of it, was just all these things happened to this woman, and then everybody seems to have an opinion about it, but the one person who can and at least have a thought about it, her thoughts aren't what's broadcasted everywhere. She keeps it mostly private because it's a very private thing. But I did like that they kind of showed that with Sidney, of like her struggle of being like, I didn't know who she was, and that was her big thing. And it really is that she can't show who she was because of the things that these men did to her, right? But yeah.
I do think bringing the meta out even more, having the director be the killer as well, is kind of Craven acknowledging his role in all of this too. Because there is kind of like, if he did hear these rumors, and yes, they may have just been rumors and stuff like that, but he was trying to expose them, he's still also working under him, just as the director of this was working under Milton, knowing full well what he did and what he was capable of. And also the fact that Craven never liked making horror movies. He wanted to do anything but make a horror movie ever again. In fact, this was his swan song to the genre, of which he said multiple times in his career. But playing this role where screen violence just gets carried out over and over again, I think the Roman of it all kind of plays into it. How did people feel about the retcon with Roman? I think Scott Foley gives a great performance, and I like the whole killer reveal and how it plays out. It on paper probably doesn't land as strong as it does, were it not for the fact that Scott Foley is able to completely sell it and also be a viable physical threat to Sidney, which I don't think you got necessarily in the other two movies. First time I saw this, I was genuinely worried that she might go out. What do you think of the retcon of Roman was the one that went to Billy's mother with the info, and Billy being upset, and he nurtured Billy uh, to be to kill Maureen, not knowing that they were going to write their own movie, which would be Stab. Right? Uh, how do how do people land on that? Paris, what do you think of Roman?
I thought that was very interesting. I didn't expect that at all. To have the whole back plot of that very set up, very nurtured. I like that was like a little believable, but then I also had questions about it where I was like, how did we like? There's a lot that goes into that, and then I feel like at some point he would have had to be like nudged in the other movies, like a little Easter egg in the other ones towards this. But I like get it. I can understand where he like dropped the hint. It was caught on too, and then we have the snowball effect, and also the egos in that of the narcissism of people being like, that was a product of me. Like I wanted that. That's my claim to fame. That's my thing. That's everything with me.
I like that he's bothered by the fact that he got Billy and Stu to do what he wanted them to do, but then they went on and wrote this movie that was more successful than anything in his career, to the point where he's doing the third movie of their idea, which he feels should have been his. It's like, what a fucking vile little dude.
The ego is huge.
Yeah. Right on. I know that's a deal breaker, and that's the thing that kind of rubs people. There are two things that really people don't like about Scream 3. One of them is the retcon of it all. However, I do think that is very much in line, much like Randy says, with the third entry of a trilogy. This is where you get confirmation about Vader being Luke's father, and Luke having a twin sister who is the other Hope, right? This is where you have Spider-Man 3, where Sandman is the real killer of Uncle Ben. Um, and or the fact that in Captain America 3, Tony Stark, uh, his parents were killed by the Winter Soldier. None of these were true from the offset, but it's the third entry that drops in this big reality changing revelation. And so that commentary kind of works for me. So when people get really pushed back by that and burned by that, doesn't play as well. The thing that I think holds a little more credence is the fact that this is the Scooby Doo Scream. It is structured and feels like a Scooby Doo episode. And where the first two are a little more grounded, this one goes kind of like full cartoon for about 40 minutes.
I think the all the trap doors and stuff in the house really highlight that. I was like, man, this feels like it's a Scooby-Doo movie. So I'm really glad that you said that, because I was just like, how many secret doors are in this house, you know?
Well, and also, like, this is the first, well, no, I guess this is the second movie where you actually get the mask reveal, but it does very much feel like anybody could have been under that mask. It didn't matter who it was. The motive is what mattered. Whereas in the first two movies, you can figure out absolutely who's behind it, exactly when and where, and why. And in this one, it's a lot more like, yeah, okay, I guess. There are hints in there that it is Roman, but it does feel very Scooby Doo. I wanted to talk about Sidney's journey. I love the fact that the film, even though what Mickey did to her in the second one, that completely exploiting her trust and her fragile state, driving her into absolute solitudinous, she still, in her solitude, decides to try and help people and is there for women's crisis counseling. I thought that was spectacular. What do people think of Sidney's journey in this film? Um, because this was by design the end of the story for the three of them, but the end of the story for Sidney.
I might have a hot take on this, actually.
Let's hear
I
it.
like it, but Homegirl got to go do the work for herself. Like, love the sentiment, love that she's doing it. You can also see how she gets triggered in there a couple of times, though, where it's like, girl, love that you're doing the work, but, like, you got to do your own work here. You're living in the middle of nowhere because you're scared of the world. You have all these things going on. You're trying to, like, give back and, like, do those things. But at the end of the day, she needs therapy. She needs help. She's got to help herself.
That is fair. I actually didn't think about that, but you're right. There's active moments in the film where she's being triggered while on the phone call. But
I think it's interesting because it's not the original script. You know, it's not the original intent. So I'm wondering how they would have played it in the other ones, if it would have been so obvious or so, like, I don't know, clean of an arc, if that makes sense. Like, I think we can all say, wow, good for her. Like, she's sort of staying out of the limelight, but she is giving back and helping. And that, like, makes sense to us. We're like, well, of course, she has gone through trauma. Her mother was raped and murdered. She has obviously been, like, stalked and terrorized, and her friends have all died. And, like, she's giving back in a way that feels good to us. But I also think that after going through all of that, she might not be so well adjusted. Like, I think she's too well adjusted. She's living on her own, kind of off the grid, but, like, not in a way that I would be. I think if I had gone through something like this more than once, like, it would be like, oh no, that's definitely going to happen to me again. And I'd be in, like, a panic room fully. I wouldn't be, like, out in the world, not even with a fake name. I wouldn't be engaging, probably. Like, I think we've covered it, that this is sort of like a whimsical, happy kind of take on Scream. Like, it's not necessarily as dark or gruesome or serious, if you will, as the first two. And I think the way that they have her sort of get kind of a happily ever after is a little clean and neat and easy. I could see a different Sidney, but I think this one is fine, if that makes sense. But I could see it being different, like having her go, like, super gritty also. Like, she could have been Terminator Sidney too, like spending her whole time just, like, bulking up and hitting, like, bags in the back and lifting weights and coming back is like Rambo, here to help too. So I think she just kind of skates by, and maybe that's fine. Maybe that's the right arc for her.
I also thought it was really interesting that, like, her job is now answering phone calls, when that's how this whole thing started. So,
Yeah.
Exactly.
I didn't even realize that.
That is.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Be like, yes, let me listen to a phone ring all day. I don't know if that would actually be her choice.
Yeah. I did like the development of, like, that's what she did with her time. I definitely see what you guys mean of, like, the, you know, she's got a whole lot of stuff she needs to work through. I guess my thought was, like, well, and obviously I don't think that the writers thought about that at all, but I was like, you know, I guess I could see that, like, while she's doing this help, she may also be getting her own help as well, like kind of like a counselor's counselor kind of thing. But the writers definitely weren't thinking about that. They weren't, you know, putting in all the
Fans,
yeah.
They didn't have time to think about it. They had to write
Yeah.
it in, like, less than 6 weeks.
I think they were just like, oh, we've traumatized her, so let's have her job be to help out traumatized women, because that's, like, kind of a through line and whatnot. And I think it works in the sense of, like, this franchise has so far, well, I mean, you could definitely absolutely make the arguments that it's not like some elite feminist, like, you know, screenplay or whatever, because, like, it's not, but it's what it does try harder than most mainstream media to try and I guess treat the at least the main woman in the franchise as a serious person, and I felt like they were treating this her story more seriously, in the sense of like, she's got a serious job. She's taking her safety seriously. I did think throughout most of the movie, I was like, why are you not in witness protection? Like, that's crazy. But I was like, you know what? If they use that logic, there wouldn't be a third movie, and then I'd be sad. So I can't be that upset about it. But at the same time, I was like, at least at the very least, they're taking her as a person seriously. She's not at the whim of the what's going to happen in the movies. She feels more in control of her own path and story, and that's, I think, mostly highlighted at the very end when the door kind of swings open and she just leaves it, and you're like, oh, she's okay, she's fine. But other than that, I do agree a lot with like she needs help, and like it is kind of serendipitous that they're like, oh, let's just have you working in a crisis center, and you're answering phones all day. But again, that might just be their idea of like, well, we want to make the themes extremely clear rather than like mostly clear, like kind of vague or whatever. But
I do think it's a very thoughtful take on her character. I do agree with your criticisms, especially after seeing that pointed out so eloquently by Paris. That is very accurate. At the same time, like in that first Ehren Kruger draft, she was working at a child care center, and I'm like, you're gonna put yourself around children? Like after ghost faces pop up out of, like, absolutely not, I don't buy this. And she had like it said in multiple spots that she had like severed wrists and stuff like that, or scars from severing her wrists, and attempted suicide. I prefer this take on that. I don't think we need to damage the girl beyond the point that men around her already have, you know what I mean? um, but I do enjoy when the moment she chooses to come out of hiding and she um, confronts Ghostface. She gets like possibly the most badass line where she's like, "It's your turn to scream, asshole." Um, I like that she knew that like maybe he would ask if she was going to have a gun, so she had another gun on the same leg. So if she was questioned about it, she could throw one but still have the other one. Like she thought this out, and I thought that was really cool. My favorite line in any of the Scream movies is in this one, and it's when Roman is just giving his soliloquy or whatever, right? And then she's like, "Do you know why you killed people, Roman? Do you? It's because you choose to. There is no one else to blame. Now it's time to grow up and take some fucking responsibility." That is like the biggest cheer moment, and I absolutely loved it. She's heard this shit before, and she just cuts him down in the middle of his like monologue, and it's fantastic. Um, I also really love the symbolism at the end of the doors open, the music swelling, and it's like a powerful, positive version of the Sidney theme. Right after Dewey and Gale get engaged, like it's really sweet. The one killer thing doesn't really play because the script originally featured two killers. And they started filming it with the plan for two killers. It was going to be Roman and then Angelina Tyler. And the evidence is all over the film still. She's the one that gets separated from the group when the house explodes. Um, she's the one that she finds in the bathroom with the ghost face mask and the voice changer, stuff like that. In the house, there is still a ghost. Like there's a They Billy or no Dewey and Gale find in the closet the ghost face mask and voice changer, but then the killer comes out of nowhere shortly after. Why would there be two unless there are two killers? Um, this was changed kind of during the production, as a note from Bob Weinstein, who said we should really just have it be only Roman in an effort to further distance from Columbine and the whole two killer thing. But I think the movie still plays, and it's always bothered me that it's Roman because there's multiple points where like there has to be two. Like you literally see like Roman's down or the killer's knocked out on the set, and then like a second later, a killer comes out of the closet. There has to be two killers. I have fan theory crafted that she was the other killer, and he just killed her before the end, because she's running and planting the seeds of like we should all get out of here, just like she was doing before at the house, before it exploded, and then just runs in and gives like that terrifying scream and just gets stabbed, and then you see her dragged away. I like to think that she was the other killer. Oh, by the way, motive. Real quick, I was just going to say that her motive in the script was that she was a student of Sidney's who always idolized her and wanted to be her, and then won this opportunity to be her by having sex with John Milton and getting the role. And Roman got off on the fact that he could sleep with his sister in a weird Oedipal kind of thing. I'm glad they ditched that.
Yeah, I do feel a little bit better because that's who I thought the original killer was. Like right off the bat, I was like, it's got to be this woman. I don't know what it was about her. I was like, I feel like her playing as Sidney, and then all this other stuff. And then she has a very big tone shift, I think, throughout the movie. And that also kind of got me thinking, like, I think it's got to be her. And then with the toilet thing and all that, of her having the Ghostface mask. And I think at one point I was like, well, I think that there are two killers. I think she's one of them, and I can't figure out who the other one is. They try to plant this seed of it being the detective, and I was like, I could see them trying to do that and making it be like, this is a version of Sidney and a version of Dewey that are the killers in this one. But ultimately I was like, it's probably not. I don't know, but I was pretty firm that it was the woman that was playing as Sidney in the movie. But there was a point, especially toward the end, where I was like, I think if there are two killers, I don't think that they're working together like they usually are. And I think your fan theory would work for that too, which I'm going to choose to accept that as well, because I think that works well. But I
get through the movie if I'm just like, she's the other killer, and he just offed her before the end.
Yeah, which I would fully believe, right? Like that, because it would tie up a lot of stuff for Roman. It would kind of make Roman again a more sinister character. But those were my thoughts on the killers throughout the movie. Is that she was the only one that, like, the whole time I was like, I'm almost positive she's at least one of them. I was pretty sure that there was two most of the time. I had only like one instance where I was like, maybe the trick is that there is only one, and they're trying to trick me into thinking that there's two because there's been two, which they got me with that. And then Roman was barely even on my radar as one of the killers. I was like, maybe, I guess I could see it. But them having him just be like this whiny director character, I was like, I almost got he's almost too pathetic to do it. And I kind of believed more that I keep forgetting the name of the character that was playing Sidney in that movie, but Angelina Tyler. I kind of felt like I could see it being like she, while playing as Sidney, gets in this kind of like weird method actor-y way of she wants to be Ghostface as well, and kind of a weird she's trying to overact the character, trying to Jared Leto it and be like, do what she thinks is going to be a smart and method actory thing, but in reality is just psycho. And those were my thoughts on that. I really thought I had it, and in the last, like, after she gets killed, I was like, I'm not even going to try to figure out who it is. I'm just going to watch the rest of this and have a fun time, because I was like, I was so far off, because they kill like everybody. Like, there is almost no survivors in this one. So I was like, well,
Yeah. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to say about this before we dive into the fun facts and trivia?
Oh, I do actually. I wrote this down in my notes, and I feel very strongly about this. Whoever does hair and makeup absolutely hates Courteney Cox. They put a hex on her. They want her to have bad things in life. They said, please take all the pain in the world. We hate you, and we're going to make you look dumb. I get so irrationally mad at these bangs coming back. The Scream 1 bangs showing up again is like my trauma response. Like, I viscerally react to seeing Courteney Cox with those micro bangs. I feel so bad for her. She looks great in Scream 2, and they're like, no, we're gonna make her awful again.
I think in Scream 2 is in peak attractiveness for the entire cast across the board. Yeah, that was David Arquette. He
no wonder they're divorced.
He was like, you should do the Betty Page look, and they
no.
And we're like, oh, this doesn't look great. So they did it shorter and shorter, and then
it was basically gone. What an insane look that they tried to give her. The whole time I was like, was she like also like an understudy for Joe Dirt while she was filming this? Like, what is going on?
Yeah,
absolutely hated it.
The true second villain of the film is that hairdo.
It's the hairdo. I believe it. It was it was almost distracting, right? Like, it was hard to watch the scenes, and then especially with Parker Posey almost looking more like Gale than Courteney Cox in a lot of the scenes. There was one or two times where I thought that it was Gale talking and it was Parker Posey, and I was like, they got me, but I'm glad that somebody said it. That hair was insane.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on to the fun facts and trivia about Scream 3. So Matthew Lillard was contracted to be in Scream 3 based on the treatment by Kevin Williamson, but was bought out after the events of Columbine. So he was paid for this movie. However, there's a lot of controversy surrounding the Stu-Dun-It of it all. The Stu is alive and Stu is the killer in Scream 3. Because some sources say that he was always supposed to be, and others say the opposite. Richard Potter, who was one of the executive producers on Scream and Scream 2 and heavily helped develop Scream 2 from the set of Dawson's Creek when they had to rewrite that film from the ground up because of script leaks, was there when Scream 3 was being pitched, and he claims that Stu was never part of Scream 3, as he helped pen the story with Williamson and Julie Plec on the set of Scream 2. And he claims that if it was at play at all, it was crafted after his departure, but he is adamant that it was never meant to be Stu in Scream 3, and that it was an internet rumor that just took off. However, it was Matthew Lillard himself who revealed his involvement in a 2009 podcast interview, saying that he was supposed to be the killer in Scream 3. And during this 2009 interview, this would have been a time when there was no future Scream movies even on the horizon. Like, nothing was in the works. He wouldn't benefit from lying about that. So I do think that maybe where Richard Potter was concerned, they it was just like a cult of Ghostface, and then later in the process came the idea of maybe Stu survived the TV Two Face. Um, Many of the things abandoned from the Williamson's treatment ended up getting reworked in either future Scream movies or as the base concept for um, like that cult of Ghostface um, being led by a man behind the bars was the premise to Kevin Williamson's TV show The Following, which came out in the mid 2010s. He reworked his Scream 3 pitch, and in the original script for the pilot episode of that, Kevin Bacon's character, the detective who's trying to hunt down the serial killer, had a severe limp from a stabbing by that killer once before, a la Dewey. That was ended up changed before the show came to be. They ended up giving him a pacemaker. Um, the Roman and Angelina script ended on the sets of Stab 3 instead of the whole mansion thing, which is why those sets were so prominent. And Angelina's character was to be killed by a TV to the head, which apparently is not lethal. Um, the End Mansion was the same location used for Halloween H2O as the boarding school. Halloween H2O is a film about a final confrontation between a long lost sister who confronts and kills her murderous brother, and is designed as the third entry in the Halloween franchise, just as this was the third entry. So the meta continues. The film had many scenes written on the day, so all the actors complaining in the film is a reflection of what they were actually going through with this damaged production. This was their everyday lives. Um, Emily Mortimer was granted a starring role in one of Craven's next projects, Paris Je T'aime, as well as featured in a photo shoot where he used her as a stand-in for Audrey Hepburn to recreate a photo spread for the New York Times on Old Hollywood. My guess is that he did this as an apology for taking away the whole "she was the killer" thing from this movie. Um, Randy's tape had some exceptional bits cut from it. You can see these deleted scenes online if you look for them, but um, in the beginning of the video, he's like, if you're watching this tape and these killings haven't been solved, look at Mickey because he wrote a paper claiming Superman 2 is better than Superman and that's serial killer behavior. That killed me. And then at the end of the video, right before turning it off, he's like, I can't believe I got killed before episode 1. I hope that movie sucks. And then he turns off the recorder. That sent me. But this I thought was really cool. The script that was used for production and included on the DVD-ROM box set DVD has the original end of the film. They all are in the living room at Sidney's house. They are going into the kitchen to watch a movie. Or not the kitchen, the living room to watch a movie. And that movie was going to be Randy's Got Another Tape. And on the tape, he says, hey guys, so this tape is a guide to my collection. I think you know me as the horror movie guy, but there's all kinds of other genres of life too, So I wanted to share some of my favorites. How about we start with a little comedy? How about a little happy ending? And that was going to be how the film faded to black. And I think this was Craven directly speaking to the audience, saying goodbye to the genre. But unfortunately, it was lifted, and he basically meandered through the genre until the end of his life, sadly. David Arquette and Courteney Cox got married right before this film started filming, but had to cut their honeymoon short in an effort to get this movie made. And their honeymoon was traveling around the world to all the greatest roller coasters. But yeah, in order to make that December 10th release date, they had to cut their honeymoon short, which is why they look awful bronzed in certain scenes. Um, the film did not make its release date. It was pushed to February 4th, 2000, 8 weeks later. Um, I want to end with a quote before giving our star ratings. So, um, I thought this quote is a pretty strong one. It's from Wes Craven on the commentary of Wes Craven's New Nightmare pertaining to violence in cinema. Um, we are dealing with things that kids see and perceive very strongly, and that we ourselves have experienced. And if you don't do art about it, you will, in a sense, be more mad than ever because you won't be acknowledging some of the most important primal truths. This to me sort of epitomizes the argument that, by showing kids scary films, you cause them to do scary things when all around us in the world, everywhere you want to look, and certainly in the front page of any day's newspaper, you will see real life horror stories on a scale that would dwarf absolutely anything that could be in a horror film. Take Bosnia or Chechnya or any of 100 things that happen in the United States on any given day, and that child knows is real, that would put anything we have in a horror film to shame. I always liken it to an ugly person smashing the mirror. It's not the mirror that is ugly, it's what's reflected. And I think that stance comes through in this film with Sidney saying, I've heard this shit before, and dressing down the killer who's trying to blame absolutely anything else but himself. What? How many stabs would you give Scream 3? Jared, you go first.
I think on the first watch, I was kind of leaning toward like the 6 or 7 stabs out of 10. I think I could elevate that to like 8 with more of that commentary in it and more of like the information and the thoughts of like others too, of like me being like, oh, I can see these things that I didn't before that are actually really good about the movie. I think like it is it has a similar look to the other ones and a similar feel. I just think that the other ones were kind of like more exhilarating. But I also like threw those ones like super high praise. Like those were both like 10 out of 10s, and this one is not super far off for me. Like I'm not trying to say like this was a bad movie by any means. It was still very good. And I think that's just a commentary on like how we rate movies. Like, most people are like, "Oh, it's a 7 out of 10. That must mean that it's terrible," And it's like, no, it's still a really good movie. So I don't know, like 7, maybe 8 on like a good day with if I'm having a good time.
Right on. Paris, how many stabs are you going to give it out of 5 or 10?
I'd go like 4 out of 5 or like an 8 out of 10.
Okay.
I thought overall it was really true to the franchise. I liked it. Like if it did just stop right here, I'd be happy. It would be a great like finishing place. I'd be happy with it. There were certain things where I was like, that's kind of weird or like whatever. I do think if there would have been like 2 killers, I think that would have tracked a lot better for me, where I've been like, got it. Because like Jared said earlier, throughout it, I was kind of like, it has to be this girl. Like, there's too many little Easter eggs in this for it not to be her. But overall, I mean, no huge complaints, but I think it's definitely true to the franchise. I liked it. It was silly. It was easy to watch. I would watch it again.
That's fair. Amber, how many stabs are you going to participate in?
I would do like a 3.5 stabs out of 5 stabs. And I think for a lot of the same reasons, I do think this film is very much hurt by the fact that it was rewritten so quickly, and that there were different versions of the final version. I think they kind of worked backwards from, okay, I guess this is what we're gonna have happen, and then threw in that backstory to make it work. So I feel like the plot of this one gets a little dodgy, and a little bit forced in some areas. And uh, like it was mentioned, this one isn't as like scary, serious, exhilarating. I think it falls into that Scooby Doo or that Clue Who Done It, and it goes a little bit more comedy horror. And horcoms, as I like to call them, are one of my favorite things, but only when they're intentional. And I feel like this one isn't necessarily intentionally a horror comedy. It just is a horror that gets a little campy and silly instead of like campy and intentionally saying something with its silliness, if that makes sense. I hope it does. This one, I think, just loses a little bit of the seriousness of like a horror film and the Scream franchise, but good. Love the cast. Probably one of the best casts out of the franchise, in my opinion. Yeah, and I think, again, if it had stopped here, I agree. I would have been happy with the end of the franchise being this.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback off of that and give it 3.5. I go back and forth between 3.5 and 4 little stabby stabs, but I'm gonna give it 3.5 right now. It's not as clean as the first two films by any stretch of the imagination. It's definitely messy, but at the same time, its main goal is when confronted with like great tragedy that happened and sort of shining a light on an ugly truth that Hollywood is very much guilty of. They, at the end of the day, wanted to make a film that was going to be entertaining and a satisfying conclusion. And I think on both of those levels, it works. This movie is entertaining. This is longer than the first two films, but it does not feel its runtime. It moves at a brisk pace, but not like a breathless one. And it still has scenes that like kind of slow the momentum down, but every single scene sort of adds further context to what the characters are in a sort of true way. I think the side characters are definitely underwritten in comparison to the first two films. However, you do have actors good enough in their caliber of performance to elevate them. We haven't talked about Patrick Dempsey much, but he is fantastic as Mark Kincaid. Very attractive, alluring, but like with a sinister edge that you're like he easily could be the killer. Even like Jenny McCarthy, who like despite her personal beliefs now, like she is really good at like landing some of her comedic lines and playing that character. And like Parker Posey and whatnot, but it always comes down to the main trio, and I think they each of them give a satisfying conclusion and send off. And I love it. My favorite shot in this film is the spinning knife that's going right towards Dewey's head, where I was convinced upon seeing that opening night that I was like, oh no, Dewey's finally gonna die. And when the butt hits him and he falls down the stairs, that's like, I think, peak comic gold. That never doesn't make me laugh. So yeah, like as I'm talking about it, I can easily bump that up to 4, but with the critical lens, it is a little, it's sloppy, and it just is so dissociated from the first two's more grounded approach. Um, that being said, this is not the last we will be screaming. We will be touching on Scream 4 in about 2 months' time. I would like to thank the guests that are here today, and I will have you all on future episodes if you will come back. The next movie that we're going to be covering on the podcast is going to be the original Sam Raimi Evil Dead. So stay tuned for that one in the month of July. Thanks for watching, everybody, and thanks for guesting. Bye.